When you look at a problem in its whole,
Mm-hmm.
5% is the problem, 95% is our attitude towards the problem.
Yeah, true.
And so if the way you handle that situation can make it a perfect situation. Welcome back to our channel, and thank you once again for joining us in this another day in the life of living on Autistic Edge. I am Terry and Elaine,
And I'm low and feel Elaine.
and we are here to share with you tips and tricks of how we navigate through our journey right here on Autistic Edge.
All right, so there we've been talking about parental challenges. We've gone through a series of these videos. Last week we spoke about some of the challenges that parents have with caregivers finding the right support for their child. But
Yeah,
guess what? We never finished last week,
we never finished
right?
last
So
week.
we're gonna finish off this week highlighting some of the challenges and some of the tips that we recommend that
Yeah,
parents use as they look to seek
yeah,
caregivers for their
for
children.
their children. All right, so we end last week talking about the cost, and that is always a hard ball,
Right,
and there is just so much to talk about in terms of cost.
right.
Now,
I just wanted here to just kind of do a quick little recap on what we
mhm,
spoke about last week. So we talk about things like understanding the child's needs. That was the
right.
first one that we covered.
We talk about the qualification and experience of the caregivers as well.
Right. Yes.
Right.
And the training that's required there, the
Mhm.
specialized training in particular that's
Right.
required, right?
Mhm. And them having patience and understanding.
Yes, that's very key for anybody that is working with a child that is on the spectrum. Patience and understanding is extremely key. We talk about consistency, the need for them to understand routines and the predictable behaviors and environment that these children love and will more
Love.
likely flourish in.
Right. And one of the key areas we touched on too was the communication skills,
Yes.
because that's a very that's a very critical area
Mhm.
in understanding and navigating um with these children. The
Right.
communication, it just rough. The
Yes.
communication piece there rough,
Yes.
especially when the child is non-verbal,
Non-verbal, that
and
is
the
true.
different stakeholders. We spoke about that
Right.
in extent, right?
Yep, we spoke about behavior management, them
Mhm.
understanding that these children
Right.
that are on the spectrum, they will potentially have behavioral challenges.
We look at the caregivers availability and commitment, being
Right.
able to commit to the task that is at hand, because it's not an easy task.
Yep, and we talk about compatibility, the caregivers having a bond with the child.
With
That's
the
key as
child,
well.
right, and safety and security, which is a critical one. And remember, you can go back and check the home safety and the car safety videos
Yes,
that we have
did.
done before.
Right.
Right. And one other thing that we talk about that
Was the cost.
the cost
That's-
associated with caregiving.
I think that's where we left the last
That's where we
video.
left the last time. All right, so this week we're gonna tell you a few more. So you want to jump at it there?
Right. The availability of resources. So depending on where you reside, which territory you're in, etc., you may find it challenging to get resources in that particular area. So this is one area that potentially can be limiting for you as a parent of a child on the spectrum.
I want to expand a little bit on this in terms of the accessibility and the area. Now, we don't know where you're watching from, so
Yes.
you may find persons watching from the larger countries like the US. We know that in the US, the caregiving service, the government will provide services for you in their home. But our experience in the Caribbean, more specific to Jamaica, is that this is a very limited resources. Now, for the entire island of Jamaica, there are some areas where you really don't know what caregiving is all about. And when we talk about caregiving, you know about the general caregiving for babies and all of
Yes.
that. But for the special need children, we don't have much of that skill set any at all.
Yes.
And we have seen where persons in certain areas may call us and even ask, how can I find a shadow? And a matter of fact, when we talk to them and we ask, I mean, do you have a shadow for your child? And they will say, shadow, they don't know a name, so the only shadow they know are the one half a light. So I mean, it's just critical because the names are used interchangeably. So you will hear a shadow, you
Student
will hear student
assistant,
assistant, you will hear
caregiver.
caregiver, any other name, and those are some of the names that they may refer to them as, right? So I mean, living in certain areas of the country, it just
Yeah.
not realistic at all.
Yes, yes. As you mentioned, the different names for the role there, sometimes, there may be stigmas associated with particular roles. I want persons to understand that these persons that are assisting in this area, it's not because they don't have any education. It's not because they can't do no better while they're in the space. Most of the persons and the more successful caregivers are persons who have invested time in their training. They have spent a lot of time in this space. I've known there of even one individual that works with us now who she stepped away from being a teacher to working in this space as a student assistant
Yeah.
because she found that she had greater value based
Right.
on that. So I just wanted to add that here
Yeah,
as well.
and as parents, we have to be very careful that when we have the caregivers, we are not being very condescending
Yes, and take
in our
advantage.
approach with
Yes.
these caregivers, because sometimes we treat them a particular way as if they are not, it's as if they are not important. It's like they are of a lesser
Yes.
nature in taking care of our child. But for us, we place a high value on our child.
Yes.
And as a result of that, anybody in our space, they have to understand that you are a part of the family. So because you're not only supporting the children, because by supporting the child, by extension, you are supporting us. You're supporting our jobs, because if we don't have caregiver, we don't have proper caregiver, we can't go to work.
Yeah.
I mean, when there is no caregiver, we can't go to work because the child can't go to school, because there is just this domino effect of things when they happen.
Yeah.
So therefore, we need to make sure that we as parents are treating them with the desired respect, communicate with them effectively, because the way we treat them sometimes is kind of really make you feel like they are lesser of an
Yeah.
individual
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
scheme
And
of
I know we
things.
spend a little bit of time on this, but you
Yeah, but
just
it needs to be talked
yes,
about.
but the point I was just gonna make is that you just invoke another thought. Another thought came to mind.
Tell me.
The caregivers, they're an intricate link in the whole autism dynamic, right? Because remember, as parents, you are limited in terms of the things that you are able to do directly.
Yeah.
So you have to rely heavily on the person in this role. So they play a very critical role
Yes, they
when it
do.
comes on to your autistic child. So depending on how you treat this person, the result may be a reflection. So
Yeah.
you might find that they'll go to school, and because you're condescending to them, etc., couldn't care less
They couldn't care
while
less.
they're there.
They
And
just do
they're
the
not
bare minimum.
they're not invested. But when
Yeah.
you help them to understand the role that they play, how critical that role is, and then even when we have our own caregivers there, we explain to them that, hey, it's important that you show up for work on time, you ensure that you're available to work, etc. Because if we are unable to work, then it means that we are unable to pay you, because you allow us to do what we do so that all of us can exist
I want to add this point. I
economically.
want to add this point to it there. Some of the skills that we are expecting the caregivers to have, we need to have them as parents too.
Oh, well.
And when I say some of them, you may not have the training, but you need to be knowledgeable, right? But here is it. especially the communication skill,
Yes.
because communication can be a real bottleneck at times. If it's not managed carefully, it can be problematic.
All right. I think we spent quite a bit on that particular
Yeah, I
one.
mean, that one sound like you were just passionate.
Yes. So here's one now, dear, that is gonna be really, really key. Emotional and physical stamina.
Why?
All right. So mental health is going to be very key in terms of the person that you're looking at to fill this particular role. You need somebody who is stable mentally,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we talk about patients in the previous video, but in this case, you need somebody who's able to manage their emotions well. And it's not that you're not going to have challenges as a caregiver, but you have to find constructive ways of how you manage that particular challenge, understanding that you don't expose the child to certain things, even if you have concerns between the parent and the caregiver. You have concerns, you don't bring that out in the presence of the child, those sort of things.
Yeah. um it is imperative too that, just like the parents go through the different emotional stress, we also need to understand that the persons who care for these children will go through some amount of stress as well, and especially if they have a vested interest with the children or in the children. You may find that sometimes they may take on, or they may feel a little, helpless too when things are happening and they themselves, because guess what, not because they are caregivers and not because they are trained
Yes.
and not because they have certain experience, we also have to understand that the dealing with our individual child is different from any other child. And there are going to be some unique challenges with our child that you may not experience with other child. And it is imperative for us to have that emotional stability where we are able to balance the different
That's right.
changes and navigate the different changes when they come through.
Yes.
Because as parents, we have to go through it. The persons who work along with us will have to understand that they too will have to go through this, because when you look at a problem in its whole, 5% is the problem, 95% is our attitude towards the problem.
Yeah, true.
And so if the way you handle that situation can make it a perfect situation. So you see a challenge, because guess what them say, life is lifing. They are just going to be always challenging.
Right.
But the attitude that we have towards these challenges is what is going to make the difference. It's what is going to make us emotionally stable, more than you scream, you holler, you pull out your hair, you ball off of the picnic and you want to lick him. No, that create disaster.
Right.
Understand? But
Yep.
being able to have that self-management and that emotional stability makes it a perfect situation.
Right. I want to spend a little bit of time on the physical side of this as well, because it can be physically demanding of a role, right? As a caregiver, you'll find that these children, they are incredibly strong. I mean, our son is on a seafood diet, and no, it is not an SEA food diet, it's an SEE food diet. Everything our son sees, he wants to eat. Right? So you can tell based on the size of Alexavier that he's not a very small child, right? So you have to be able to physically keep up with him. But outside of that, even if the child isn't big physically, do you find that they have incredible strength?
I mean,
right?
When Alex was smaller, we remember when Alex was much smaller.
Yes.
There are sometimes just to control him when he decided to go off on a run.
Yes.
It was like almost difficult to
Yes.
hold the child. And even though he was kind of big bodied from you was smaller,
Yes.
which makes it, but I mean, there were points when we had, small frame. Not much period of that though.
Yeah.
But them still strong.
Yeah.
They have an excess amount of strength.
Yep. And you have to be able to match that and understand that that's something that you'll have to handle. All right.
Yeah, and one other thing too, we have to make sure that our caregivers are healthy.
Yes.
It's a
You
key
can't be
point.
wiki.
No, you can't be wiki and every minute sicky
Yeah,
and all of
no.
those. A whole heap of challenges that pose, a whole
Yes.
heap of challenge
Take your
because
vitamins.
oh my God, listen. I mean, dear, you're talking like joke. I want a serious joke, this, I want a serious joke, man. Like, you have to have stamina, you have to have strength, you just have to have everything.
That's it.
All of your wires, them have to connect to deal with these children.
Children.
Easy.
Absolutely. 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 So
So
let's
guess what?
segue
So
there.
we have talked a lot about the challenges, and I mean, if we go on, we can continue talking about a lot more challenges. Caregiver need to understand the importance of the job that they are doing, and let me tell you, it's not just caregivers. Everybody needs to understand the
The
importance.
role.
We have our jobs, and some of these things that we are talking to you about,
Mm.
we have to look into these things to make sure that all of these challenges that we are talking about, we have to make sure that they don't affect our jobs,
Correct.
because at the end of the day, our job is what pay all of these bills that we hear we're
Mm-hmm.
talking
The
about, and we
different
have to go
therapy
through all. So
sessions,
so 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 think
everything.
about it. We have to manage all the challenges that we spoke about in our previous videos. We
Mm.
have to manage all of these challenges and at the same time create that effective balance for work.
Yes.
Right now, we would not leave without give you some recommendations, of
Right.
course,
Right.
because we have been talking about the challenges and
Yep.
all
Yep.
of that
Yep.
coming down.
Yep. As so,
Feel free,
mhm.
if you have any questions and concern that you want to, our information is on screen just now.
Mm.
You can take this information, you can reach out to us via WhatsApp or any one of our pages, send us a message,
Yes.
and we'll feel free to answer you based on how. But we're going to look at some of the recommendation now in when you're trying to find a good caregiver.
Mhm.
There are some additional things you can draw from what we have talked about before, and then we're going to look at a few more.
Right. So it starts with there, with any role,
Mm-hmm.
just like with any job, etc. For
Mm-hmm.
somebody to function effectively in that job, at the outset, the person needs to know what is expected of them in the role.
Right.
So we recommend putting together a job description.
Right.
What the job description does, it clearly states what is expected of the person that's
Mm-hmm.
going to be assuming the function, the kind of support that they too should expect from you, the parent, who is the person that is hiring them.
Right.
And then it provides you with the framework that you can measure how successful the person is with the execution of their role. So it adds some level of objectivity
Mm-hmm.
in terms of you hiring somebody to the role, allowing them to perform in the role, assessing the performance, giving them the recommendations and the corrective steps that would need to take in order to ensure that the objective is being
Right.
met.
And it helps the caregiver to understand exactly what they are getting into.
Yes, the
And what,
boundaries, the
yeah,
framework.
the
Yes.
framework, and what is expected of them,
Mhm.
so that they are not blindly going into things.
Right.
Right. And do, of course, your background checks, do your references, do your background checks. This is always important to any job functions, and it's likewise important to especially our caregivers, because these persons, we are entrusting them in our entrusting the care of our child
Right.
with these persons. So therefore, it is imperative to have proper references from reputable people and have the background checks be
Right.
done.
As well. So we skip this one, but I think this needs to be included as well. You need to interview the person. So it's not anybody and everybody that presents
Yeah.
themselves that you're going to hire, or the first person, or somebody come and say, "Me know so and so who could I do the work," and then you just take that individual and work with
I
them.
mean, dear, you made that point a while ago, and you say it,
Yes.
but it's a real challenge,
Yes.
because here is what you find, especially if you have changes of caregivers and stuff, because you don't have a very wide pool to pull from or to select from. Sometimes you end up that the persons who come is really the persons you go along with, because especially if you don't have a family support to if you don't have a family support to kind of really help you out with the child, and you need to go back to work, your boss might just give you a few days to go sort out this caregiving thing. And then you find that you have to go back to work. You really don't have a long time to find a lot of these persons or find all of the skill set that you're
They're
looking
looking
for.
for,
And
right?
a lot of times you find persons because somebody refer them, you know. Boy, Mr. Alien, me know one lady, you know, me can send the lady to you and the lady come. You know, you just go with the lady because he was referred to by somebody who you know. And that happens a lot of time because you really don't have a lot of time to, you know, kind of play with when it comes to that. But
Right. So you're right. But then when you hire these persons, right, clearly set the expectation that there will be a
yeah,
probationary period.
important. Yes,
Right.
that is
There
very
has to be a
important.
probationary period. And here's how a probationary period works. You are assessing whether the person is a good fit for the role, and the person is also assessing if this is something that I
That
want
they
to
want to
continue
continue.
from for a long term, right? So the probationary period, at least it sets the expectation up front to say during this 3 month period, we're gonna be looking. We give you the job description. We're gonna see how you measure against this job description. You are also gonna see how the relationship work with us as parents and so on. And then
So
at the end of the
it's
three
like
months,
it's
we
like a
determine.
training. It's like a training period too,
Yes,
because remember the caregiver would not really know the child.
yes.
So as the parent, we have to be willing to be flexible to kind of help with the onboarding process of the caregivers to make sure that you communicate the likings, the style of the child, any issues that you think or any behavioral expectation, so that the caregivers can, you know, adjust themselves to deal with this particular. Because remember, you know, the challenges are unique, the child is unique, the issues are really unique. So we have to pay attention that the parents will have to play a part. Parents will know say challenging because sometimes when you left the caregiver, you're gonna work and you just see the child again till when work over, and then when work over it's more like a exchange. It's like you're releasing the caregiver and the caregiver gone. There's not much time
The
sometimes to fill in the
transition.
gap and to do that transition. I mean, it's a big challenge.
Yes,
But
yes.
that's why we say navigating the journey. It is not an easy navigation. All
Right.
right. We talk about compatibility and support. That is something that you're gonna look at during the probationary period to see, make sure that the child has a have a connection rather with the caregiver.
Yeah. So the other thing that you want to look at is the person has to be supportive
Yeah.
and positive, right? We know that the challenges are many dealing with the child, but the approach makes a whole lot of a difference. You talk
Yeah.
about 5% being the problem itself and 95% your approach to the problem.
Yes. Yes.
As a caregiver, you want somebody who is positive in your space. You don't want somebody to drain on the energy. It is already a challenging environment, so you can't bring
Scratch,
in
scratch, scratch, scratch.
Miss Gloomy and Mrs. Gloomy into your space that just drains all of the energy. You want somebody who is upbeat, somebody who sees a challenge and runs to the challenge like a firefighter, excited about extinguishing that flame and adjusting and making the recommendations and
And
working together with you as a parent to say, Mommy, I recognize this, but here's what I think, and here's what we can do, and so on. Be positive about working in this space.
in other words, they should be able to display professionalism.
Yeah, I mean, it goes beyond professionalism, though.
Well,
It's an
yeah, true.
overall attitude that needs to be brought to the job. The person has to have that positive. And it's almost like somebody working in customer service. You don't want
Yeah.
somebody with a long face and a grumpy kind of attitude to be
And care all of them
yeah,
problem
you're
come on.
already calling with a problem, right? Or reaching out with a problem. You need somebody who is warm and have a nice. While you want them to be firm with the child in terms of standing their ground and that sort of thing, but they need to be able to work with love, because we never introduced that before. They have to have real, genuine love
Yeah, work with love.
that they
I
come
like that. I
they
like
come
that term
they
there.
come in
Work
this
with
space.
love because this is a job that requires love, and as you have mentioned it before, you
Yes.
have to have a real love
Mhm.
for these
For
kind of
children.
children to be able to work with them. And here is a major thing though,
Mhm.
because from last week we have been talking about so many things and the
Yes.
different challenges and the different needs and what we need to look for in a caregiver. But guess what? Realistically speaking,
Mhm.
you may not be able to find all that we have mentioned in
Mhm.
one person.
Mhm.
But here is what I would recommend: know your non negotiables.
That's a good one.
So, when we look at all the challenges that we have spoken about before, you may find somebody, they have the experience, they have the qualification, and but guess what? Something else is missing,
Mhm.
right? Communication might be missing.
Mhm. The
Um,
bond may be
the
missing.
bond may be missing, which is critical because
Yes.
you can find somebody that, boy, this person come, they're willing to support you, they have the right skills, they are able to research and help you and the resources, but then this person may really just not bond well with the child. Now, as a parent, you will have to know what your non-negotiables are,
Mhm.
because there are some things that you're gonna give and take with.
Yes.
It's like even in the regular work world, sometimes when you are trying to find persons and they may put out a job description out there, the ad might be out there, and then when you look at all of it and you go into that interview, you have three candidates and you have a toss up with the candidates because all of them have a degree,
Mhm.
all of them have some experience,
Mhm.
but then you're gonna have to look at these three persons. What is it that this person brings to the table
Mhm.
different from what this person brings to the table? And then you're gonna look at, why I like all three of them, but this is what I need and I like what that one brings.
Mhm.
Now you're gonna kind of have to do this similar thing with the caregivers. And guess what, parents? We are talking about it because in our line of jobs, we have had to interview persons in the past and we have had to make these kind of decisions, and that is why we are able to tell you this. Now, if you are not or never operated in this with this kind of experience before in terms of interviewing persons, get a recruiter to assist you. Get a recruiter to put your job description together in
Mhm.
terms of what you need. Do it professionally so that you can ensure that you are getting the best candidate to work with your
Yeah,
child.
even outside of adding another professional there,
Mm-hmm.
you could ask another parent, right,
Yeah, who have the
sit
expertise,
to sit
yeah,
with
to
you,
sit in with
right,
you.
as well, or pass the resumes by them and say, what do you think, and so on, and have a discussion around it. The point is, don't try to do it all yourself, because
Mm-hmm.
it's always good to have another pair of eyes. It's always
Yeah.
good to have that professional set of eyes as well,
Mm-hmm.
and they
Mm-hmm.
will
Mm-hmm.
help in making the selection. Because they say that is what is in sewing. They say measure twice and cut once. It's
Yes.
important for you to make the best decision first up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than rush into a decision and then you find that you're going to have to go back and do the whole recruiting process all over again. Yeah.
Yeah. So the caregiving, it's a real challenge.
Yes.
So we cannot give you a best cut. We
Yes.
can give you a good measure,
Yeah.
but we can give you a framework to work with.
Yes.
So once you know what you're looking for, once you know your non-negotiables, and you may have to negotiate according to your pocket too,
Exactly.
right? Because sometimes you might be negotiating for the best caregiver, but can you really afford the best caregiver, right? So these are all, the pieces that you have to look into. But we hope that you can gather some insights from what we have shared, and we hope that this information was helpful for you in searching to find the right caregiver for your little one. Once again, thank you for joining us in this another day in the life of living on the Autistic Edge. Don't forget to
Like,
comment
share,
and make sure you subscribe so the next time we put out another content,
you
you
will
will
be
be
notified.
notified.